Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for everything you've done for us. Please help us go through this service. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
The aim, motto, and pledge, the Advent message to all the world and my generation. The motto, the love of Christ compels me. The pledge, looking for the Lord Jesus, I promise to take an active part in the youth ministry of the church, do what I can to help others, and to finish the work of the gospel in all the world.
you, Pro Musical, for that beautiful song. Today's scripture reading will be taken from Psalms chapter 1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. Thank you.
Focused, living your divine purpose. On today's program, Moy is going to interview Dr. Isaiah J. Rolle. Dr. Isaiah J. Rolle is a vascular neurology fellow and stroke neurologist at Emory University. He completed his internal medicine internship at Riverside Methodist Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, and his neurology residency at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, serving as a chief neurology resident. Dr. Isaiah has a unique background, having already obtained his Ph.D. prior to completing his doctorate medical degree. This makes him a double doctor, an osteopathic physician, a neurologist, and a neuroscientist. He boasts born and raised Harlem roots and is married to an amazing woman, Dr. Latoya Rolle, who has earned her doctorate in education, leadership, and administration. Dr. Rolle studied biology at HBCU, Oakwood University, and has already made history, having the privilege of being the first African American to obtain a Ph.D. in neuroscience from the University of Cincinnati. He is the first in his family to become a doctor, as well as to earn a Ph.D. Dr. Rolle has been awarded research funding, named a Physician Diversity Scholar for Ohio Health, and is a member of the Gold Humanism Honor Society. He has held leadership positions within the medical community and currently serves as a chair of the board of the nonprofit Elements of Change in Columbus, Ohio, which creates programming aimed to end violence among Black youth. Dr. Rolle absolutely loves to mentor young minds, particularly Black males interested in medical careers, as he was indeed featured on an NBC News story on the importance of mentorship and diversity in medicine. Affectionately known by the nicknames Iceman or Ice, you'll know him by his colorful personality and his cool, calm, collective demeanor. In a moment, you will hear more about how Dr. Rolle has walked with God in his journey.
And those online joining us today for our focused Living Your Divine Purpose series, where we focus on youth and young adults at heart who are walking in their divine purpose and making sure that they follow wherever the Lord is leading them. My special guest for what will be our final focus series for 2022 until 2023 is none other than Dr. Isaiah Rolle. So, doctor, tell me, what do you do? What is your title?
Well, thanks for having me. I am a neurologist. I'm a neurologist, which is a brain doctor. Study conditions that treat the brain and our spinal cord and all the nerves in your body. I specialize in stroke and vascular neurology, which means, take that one. Can you hear me now? Okay. Sorry about that. I'm a neurologist, which means I'm a brain doctor. I study conditions of the brain and the spinal cord, the nerves in your body, and I specialize mostly in stroke and also in other conditions that affect the blood vessels in the neck and in your head. And so my title officially is a vascular neurologist. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks for sharing that. So tell me, how different is this from what you wanted to do originally when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, I initially, all I knew was I wanted to be a doctor. I had an interest in the brain, and I'd gotten books from my mom about our beloved Ben Carson, which he's a neurosurgeon. He's a surgeon in the brain in children, and so my first thought was to be a neurosurgeon. I wanted to open up people's heads and cut in them and kind of figure out what was inside there and kind of try to treat their condition properly. So what I'm doing now is similar and different in kind of two ways. I'm still a brain doctor. I study the brain. I do all the same conditions, but I'm not the one in the operating room spending all those hours doing the actual procedure of surgery. Yeah.
So how did you finally get to this decision as something that this is actually what I want to pursue? Tell me.
Well, I guess first I'd say I know I want to be a doctor. My mother is a nurse. She's been in home health care for all these years that I can remember, and so watching her take care of people is kind of what first sparked my interest. But then the brain is just fascinating. It's cool. You know, I knew that it controlled everything, almost everything that we do, from movement of your arm to how you think, how you talk. And so kind of, you know, my thought was the brain's kind of the top of the food chain in the body. And so I kind of wanted to study that. Coming to do neurology was really about, you know, finding a topic that I like, one that I don't, you know, fall asleep on too quickly, but also one that I can kind of really connect with the kind of people who are having issues with their brain. And so being able to really talk to someone about their condition or their symptom, and for it to be natural for me to do that is kind of how I got into neurology.
Okay, that's very interesting. You're trying to get me, pulling on my strings a little bit, tugging on me, trying to get me over that side. I'll look into it. Sure. How did your family receive it for you, studying neurology? You're like the first doctor in your family, so how did they receive that?
Mm-hmm. How they receive it? My family's proud, you know, naturally. You know, it's one thing when, you know, you have some family, you know, who just kind of know what's going on, and then it's another when you have family who's supporting you and they kind of cheer you on and root you on the whole time. So it's kind of my family. They're always been very supportive. You know, they knew that I wanted to be a doctor since I was a child, and so they're just very proud. They're very happy that I've gotten to this stage. You know, and I think they've been able to see all the steps it's taken to kind of get to this point today. Yeah.
Awesome. So do you work in the ER?
Do I work in the ER?
Yeah.
So I work everywhere. You know, so as a stroke neurologist, that means that, you know, I'm responding to someone who's having a stroke. You know, if it were anyone at this very moment who showed up in the hospital, I'm in a position where I'm one person they would call right away to show up into the ER. And so I don't work in the ER, but I'm there all the time because most of our patients are coming to the ER. And so I meet them there as soon as they bust through the door to kind of assess them, figure out what's going on, and then see how we can kind of best, you know, give them treatments.
Okay, because I work in the ER too, and a lot of times I see like stroke victims come in. You are right about busting through the door because some of the neurologists that are on site, they're literally rushing downstairs trying to make sure that that patient makes it through. So that is pretty much a very important role. Off topic, but tell us, like, what are some of the signs of stroke? How can we know, you know, when that's happening to someone, and what can we do?
So, you know, as you mentioned, people bust through the door, and, you know, it's very fast because it's all about time. Yes. You know, we have a phrase called time is brain, just like time is money. In my world, time is brain. And what that means is that if someone's having a stroke, the more time passes, the more they're going to have brain cells and brain tissue start to die. And in most cases, that's not reversible. And so it's all about kind of getting as fast as we possibly can. You have about somewhere between like 5 and 10 million neurons that die for every minute that you're having a stroke. And so, you know, when we say time is brain, we mean it. So, you know, one of the easiest acronyms that people probably have heard before is FAST. That's F-A-S-T. FAST is for face. You know, some people's face can sometimes be turned or twisted, or half the face is drooping to one side or the other. A is for arm, and that's the arm, which could also be the leg as well. So an extremity that becomes weak or even numb. S is for speech, and so your speech can be slurred. You know, it can kind of sound like you can't really understand what someone's saying, or it could be where someone's speech sounds clear, but the words they're trying to say is a completely different word what they mean to. So they may be trying to say apple, but what's coming out is actually car. Right, that's called aphasia. So, and then T stands for time, which means just call 911 right away, get someone to kind of be seen immediately. And so that's kind of what we tend to use. I will say that there's a few additional ones that are not always seen, you know, and one is vision. Someone can have vision loss right away.
Wow.
You know, you lose vision even if it's for 10 minutes or so in one or the other eye, be another warning sign. And then just sort of dizziness and being very unsteady on your feet is another one that we kind of see. And it always, for the most part, it's one that happens like right away. So it's not a slow change over a couple of weeks. It's a right in front of your face type of thing.
Wow. I'm very shocked about the vision. I always thought that when people have like the vision problems or sometimes they can't really see, it's mostly with the diabetes. So it's very fascinating hearing that it also affects stroke victims as well. Wow. What is a day like at work?
A day at work for me, so as a physician, but being a specialist, that means I'm most often a consultant. So other doctors are calling me for advice about their patient. And so, if they're a medicine doctor, they may say, hey, Dr. Rolle, I got a patient here and their arm is weak. Can you come and help me out? And so I get to advise other physicians about how to help their patients. And then I see a patient myself. So a typical day means that I come in the morning and, I have an old school pager. I don't know if you know what a pager is.
Yep.
Right? But I have an old school pager. And that's attached to my hip so people can reach me anytime they need. But basically I get called, to respond to any kind of patients, even beyond stroke, questions about what to do about their medication, someone has a new issue, or they respond to a stroke. And so I get new calls throughout the day, and I see patients throughout the day as I go. Some days it can be slow, and other days it can be
Crazy.
hot mess, is what they would say. Meaning that there's a lot of patients, and there's just a lot of people who need help. You would, imagine how many people are coming in with neurologic complaints, or at least things that people think are neurologic, and it's kind of my job to let you know, yes, that's a brain problem, or not really a brain problem.
Not your problem.
So it's equally as important to know what's neurology and kind of what's not.
Interesting that you say that. Is it that neurology and psychology kind of walk hand in hand? Would you say that they do?
I'd say so. I mean, my board certification is in neurology and psychiatry. And the same goes for psychiatrists. They get board certified in both as well. So, a lot of people will say that psychiatrists treat the mind and neurologists treat the brain, but really it's kind of one hand in hand. There are just certain conditions that a psychiatrist would treat and some that a neurologist would treat, and the ones that I treat tend to be a little more well established in terms of physical part of the brain that we know is damaged. Psychiatry, we don't always know the exact part of the brain that's damaged when someone has depression or anxiety. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin, but correct, yeah.
All right, that's interesting. So ladies and gentlemen, again, we are speaking with Dr. Isaiah Rolle. He is a neurologist here, Harlem's son, and we are interviewing him just to see what really led him down this path and what his work really entails. And for our online audience, just to remind you and those online that at the end of the interview, you will be given an opportunity to ask questions to Dr. Rolle. So whatever you want to know neurologically, think of it now, put it in the chat on YouTube. A floating mic will be going around at the end of the interview. You can ask any questions you like. So, what are some of the challenges at work? Your day already is busy.
Challenges at work. As I said before, there's a lot of patients, a lot of patients who need help. But I think the challenging part is trying to figure out a person's issue. A lot of people, like myself, we go into neurology because we like that puzzle. We like trying to figure it out. It's not always so simple. And so because the brain controls almost the entire body, that means that there are a number of symptoms or complaints a patient could have, and it could possibly be neurologic, and they're not always neurologic. And so, if grandma's pinky toe is numb, they'll call neurology. If you, saw some blood and you passed out for 2 seconds and walked back up, they would call neurology. If you had a seizure, you call neurology. If you have Parkinson's, if you have Alzheimer's disease, if you have a stroke. And so the challenging thing is that there are a lot of calls that we get. It's actually a lot more busy than I thought it was going to be in neurology. I thought it was a very slow field.
No.
But actually it's a very high-paced field that we get a lot of calls for. So it's very challenging because you have a lot of patients. Everyone's concerned about their brain, naturally so, and it's kind of your responsibility to really decipher what's real, what's not real, what's concerning, what's not concerning, and then be able to give another person confidence that they're okay, and also give myself confidence that I know that I've kind of done a good job. So that's a very challenging thing because I have found that a lot of other doctors are, they're, I want to say the word scared, but the brain can be intimidating even to other physicians. And so they're really relying upon you for your expertise to kind of say, like, I know what I'm doing, but I don't know the brain. So please tell me what to do, tell me what's going on. And so to kind of be in that position, it takes a lot of, expertise and takes a lot of, patience and confidence to kind of do that. So it's pretty challenging.
So how do you deal with patients who basically don't want to hear your advice or even heed to them, and you see them like 2, 3, 4, 5 times coming up in the ER, getting rushed to the ER for something serious, or just coming to your office or asking the doctor to speak with you?
Yeah, I'm a very practical person. I don't drag patients from their house to come to the hospital, right? And so if someone comes, I assume they want help. And if they, if they're denying help, I just, you've tied my hands for me, I'm always available. I'm always available to help, whatever the complaint might be. There are a lot of people who I think, as a physician, you get the sense that they don't really care about their own health. And it's not that that's a true statement, as you get the sensation. They may have other issues going on. It could be stress, could be financial, could be a lot of things going on. And so it may appear they don't care about their health. And so that can be frustrating when you have a patient who comes in and they're not following the plan that we set out, and they come with the same issue. But, the role really is to still be in the same position of availability no matter when they come in, and I can only offer similar recommendations or try my best to really figure out, okay, you ain't taking your medication, but maybe there's a reason why you're not taking yours, and no one's talked about it. You don't like the medicine, or you can't afford the medicine. And so sometimes it takes a little bit of time to step back and, kind of temper your perception and just think, oh, they don't want help, they're, this and that. And a lot of times there's actually a larger issue going on. If you solve that issue first, then you'll solve the other issue, which is the neurologic condition. And so if someone can't afford it, doesn't matter what's going on. So I think kind of figuring those things out is more helpful.
And the most important thing is that some of them are in denial too. The denial stage is real. So tell me about, where were you born? Like, what church did you go to? Because I'm just coming to understand you actually didn't grow up in Ephesus.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't grow up in Ephesus. So I was born at St. Luke's Hospital, right down the block. Born and raised in Harlem, and I grew up in CTAB Church. CT,
right,
if there's any CTAB people out there. But I grew up in CTAB 150th, so that's the church I went to. But yeah, born and raised in Harlem. Initially it was on 118th Manhattan and Morningside, and then we went to 149th and Broadway in Amsterdam, and now 136th and 8th. So pretty much just Harlem all the way through and through.
All right. So fun fact, did you know that he played basketball? He also played in the basketball junior league, and before today I did not know he was this tall. I think you're like 6'2". I'm wearing heels and I'm 6 feet flat. Okay. And we're literally shoulder to shoulder, so you are pretty tall. Mm-hmm. What position did you play in basketball?
What position? I played more than one position. Usually small forward. It depends on the team, but it's really kind of whatever's needed. When we were young and I was one of the tallest, I would play center sometimes. But we got a little older and I play around with people like your boy Clint over here. I more often play like small forward, and I would get thrown around a lot because I'm kind of skinny. But we had a lot of good challenges there. So yeah, small forward, power forward, shooting guard. I'm not really a handle kind of person, but yeah, I love ball. That's life.
You still play?
All the time.
Oh, okay.
Almost all the time. Let me take that back. My wife is watching probably. Not all the time, but as much as I possibly can. Yeah.
That sounds good. Next time you're back in New York, you have to stop by with the league and check us out and help
anytime.
Us out. Okay, you heard that?
I accept all one-on-one
challenges.
That's first of all.
There's a challenge out there.
Hey, Ayana.
There's a challenge out there.
I accept all one-on-one challenges, and then I got my best 5. I'm sure in the city I can find.
Oh.
And you can find your best 5, and and we can just go, just shoot the fair one. Is that fair?
Okay. That sounds good. Where did you go to school? What type of exposure did you have?
I went to pretty much SJ schools. I went to RT, Hudson. I think it's kind of changed recently, as far as I'm understanding. I went to RT, and then I went to Northeastern, and then I went to Oakwood.
Okay. What did you study at Oakwood?
At Oakwood, I was a biology major, so I knew
Okay.
I was going into medicine, so I wanted to find something in the sciences, so biology was it.
Okay, so what are some of your challenges that you faced in school? School
Challenges. First is probably being a knucklehead. That's probably the first challenge, getting over myself. But I think in actual school and classes, probably the toughest classes to prepare, like for medical school in that department, would be general chemistry, and then probably organic chemistry. Basically, all the chemistry. There are a lot of details, and a lot of them just didn't really. I didn't really vibe with them too well, if that makes sense, And so a lot of times, when you're studying something and you can't see the relevance to it quite yet, it can be very frustrating, and I just kind of don't really want to put much work into it. So, probably chemistry was my biggest challenge. I'm sure I failed chemistry once or twice.
I think we're in the same boat. When I was in high school, I missed one piece, and then it was like a downhill spiral from there. So I understand what you mean. If you miss something, you're not gonna get it back.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Okay. Any more challenges in school that you faced with?
Challenges in school, I would say an overall challenge in school was probably just test taking in general. I'd say there are some people who, I think come from, a pretty good either like school where their study system is really, really well, or they're trained very well on standardized exams. Although I love the schools I went to, I think there's some gaps and deficiencies in kind of the training for something higher level, So while I was getting straight A's in RT Hudson, which I look back at it now and say, well, I don't think it was that hard to do. You get to college and all of a sudden you get smacked in your face and you're like, yo, what's this material? Like I'm not used to this. I've never seen that before. And you got colleagues next to you, they've been doing this since they were in high school, or sometimes even in like junior high. So test taking itself has always been a challenge. There's a different approach to taking an exam than it is just sitting in class or just studying or just kind of having a conversation. So test taking, you'll probably hear more about it later, but has been kind of the bane of my existence. I was telling my mother the same thing last night about testing, especially standardized testing, ACT, SAT, MCATs, how you get into med school. It goes on and on. It doesn't really stop as you're a physician. You just kind of keep taking more tests. So that's been pretty difficult.
Wow. I don't know if you were picking it up, but I was trying to fish for more because I'm in school now too, and I feel you on the test taking part. Yeah. It's a whole different ball ground. Yeah. Are you married?
Am I married?
Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
Ooh, how did you meet your wife?
I met my wife, LaToya, in Oakwood. So we met our freshman year of Oakwood and became like best friends freshman year right away. And then the rest was history. There's not even really a story there. It was just we became good friends, talked every day, spent time together. She asked great questions. I try my best to answer them. But we became really good friends, and we've been together ever since then. Just dated throughout Oakwood. And then a year after we graduated from Oakwood, we got married. She said yes.
The rest is history. I know for some men, they know after a while, like when they met the woman or when she's the one. How did you know that she was the one?
That's a good question. I would say, I think as we started dating, I think probably about six months in, I think I felt like I knew. And I think there's a thought process that happens in my head at least where once I kind of imagined my life without her, kind of like without, just like, oh, you know what, maybe we're not going to date, maybe we'll break up, maybe we'll just go separate ways. Once I imagined that pathway, that it started to bother me. I started hurting, I do think that a lot of people can have a pretty good sensation about another person pretty early on. I can't say men versus women, but I'd say that, you know, I have dated people in the past that I knew they weren't wifey material. You know, they were cool for the moment, but then in the back of my mind, I'm kind of like, this is probably the person I'm going to marry, you know. So it's different when you're dating someone and you don't find red flags and you don't find nothing to kind of stop you. That's kind of what it was with LaToya. So, yeah, been my best friend ever since.
Oh, wow. So in your life, you've been through a lot. How did you experience God leading you?
How do I experience God leading me? It's a loaded question. In a number of ways, you know. I think it changes over the years, you know. So I grew up in the church like many people here, and I think there's a level to it as I grow into it. You're growing into just kind of getting to know who God is. You're trying to figure out what the church is telling you about God. You're trying to figure out, you know, what are just rules, you know, what's religion, what's spirituality. So there's all that transitioning, and I kind of had, you know, I think a pretty good experience at SATAB and at Ephesus, but about people who were surrounding me were kind of giving me, you know, a good roadmap, you know, to kind of figure out my own spirituality. But I'd say as I became an adult, you know, and I'm almost there, not even fully there yet, but I think my specific journey in medicine started teaching me a lot about how I interacted with God. So, you know, quite frankly, as I mentioned to you before, like testing is a bane of my existence. You know, my path to get to medicine was not so straightforward. You know, it wasn't just like dandelions and, you know, and skipping and laughing all day long. There were a lot of hardships along the way, and what it was is I had what I thought at the time was a dream. You know, I had a vision, or that, you know, I knew that God wanted me to go to a certain place, but when it's not happening when you want it to happen, and it's not happening the way you want it to happen, and your prayers are not being answered, it makes you question God immediately. And so I'd say my relationship with God is one up and down and turmoil, where I've had to get real and just think like, you know, is this real? You know, when I grew up in church, you know, my understanding of God, to put it plainly, ended up being more like a genie. You know, you ask for things and you get things, right? And so if you're taught that way, then when you don't get something, you immediately go back and say, well, he must not be real, you know, or maybe he doesn't care as much to answer my prayer. And so I think my relationship has been one that I've had to get to an honest place of questioning God. You know, I think it's healthy to question. I think it's healthy to be honest with God and say, like, I don't understand. Whatever plan you laid out don't make sense to me. You know, I believe in you. You know, I'm trusting you, but I've got difficulties, you know, and bring yourself to that place of honesty, I think, allows you to open yourself up to a new level of spirituality, where God is like, okay, you seriously question me, I'm going to seriously answer you, you know. And so I think that's kind of my relationship now, is one that is of, you know, just immediate belief, immediate faith, and when things are not going the way that exactly as I expect, I know that there's a plan that is beyond exactly what I can see in the exact moment. And so if my perspective was God's perspective, then I wouldn't be so upset every moment when things don't go my way. But when all you can see is what you can see, you know, we human, it's natural, you're going to kind of have difficulty. So I don't know God's plan, right, but I'm trusting in it, and I trust that he can see a whole different pathway than I can. And so now I relax about it. Now it's like, whatever. I'm along for the ride, I'm along for the journey. Like, I trust God, you know, and I want to push towards things. I still pray, I still ask for things. But as things, you know, develop to wherever it's left or right, I kind of take a pause, relax, and kind of just let things lead, you know, as God does. So, yeah.
Amen. Amen. That's very important. Faith is no walk in the park. I could say that for myself too. With my faith journey with the Lord, it was not from point A to point C. It was like a whole rigmarole before I even got to where I am with him right now. And thank you for sharing that. So in the moments where you wanted to give up, right? I know there were a lot of those moments. How did you get through those?
Moments of giving up, you know, I probably have really at this point two major points. That would probably be, you know, my mother is sitting in the audience over here. She's a first point of stability, I would say. You know, you can always kind of, you hope to be able to rely upon something, you know. When you're having a tough time, you want to be able to reach into something that's stable in your life, you know, in terms of support. So, you know, that's my mother. And then, you know, I'd say, you know, that ends up being a sort of a new toss-up between my mom and my wife, because my mother has the historical context of knowing the dream from the beginning, right, and praying me through it and raising me through it and supporting me all the way. And then my wife, you know, comes in as we are married, and then she lives with me, like, through all of it and is able to support me through that way. So, you know, I think getting through it really is just a matter of being able to reach back into the most stable sort of parts of your life and leaning on that. So my mom's first, my wife is second, you know, and having them kind of talk into my ear, you know, and talk into my life and say, I get what's happening to you, I get what's going on, but you can do this, you know. And so having something like that you can trust in, you know, is very important. That's kind of what it was for me.
That sounds amazing. So with all the nuggets that you're sharing and the wonderful life lessons that we have just gotten from you, do you have a podcast? Because I'd like to subscribe. Do you have one?
I do not have a podcast, but you know, some of you may have seen a few like neurology videos that I maybe just recently started putting out. And the goal, I think, you know, is to put out more, but to hopefully kind of expand it to, you know, be something that people can watch to, you know, learn something about the brain, but also kind of get inspiration, you know, type of thing. So hopefully that'll be kind of in the future. I'll let you know if that pops off.
Okay, but could I offer you a suggestion as to where you could possibly do that? Sure. YouTube. Okay. Get a YouTube channel. Okay. Trust me, not too much maintenance. You know, see, you have a subscriber already, or a few of them in the audience already.
Sure, will do. Thanks.
Not too much maintenance. It's really good. You post videos already, and we use. I don't know if most of y'all remember you were watching our week of prayer this year in March. This is a doctor that was giving all the health nuggets, and your videos that you have and those that you're gonna post, just post them. Okay. You'll have a lot of subscribers. Free, what do you call it? Free consultation? All right.
I appreciate it, yeah, sure.
No problem, just let me know when it's up. Okay. What's next?
What's next in life?
What's next, yeah.
What's next for me is really trying to figure out how to take you know, all of my experiences to another level. You know, I've done this training, you know, to get to where I'm at for a long time, but I think it's important for, you know, even within there, you still have to kind of find what really is going to make you tick for a long time. You know, I want to have a long career, but not just a career, but also my life. You know, so for me, it's about expanding my family. It's about you know, really kind of want to take us to new places. You know, so you know, I have, as an example, you know, I'm into more things than just medicine. You know, so you know, I love acting. I love writing. You know, I love spending time with my family. You know, I have children. I didn't tell you about my children. I have 2 daughters at home. You know, so really, it becomes very quickly, you know, more about your family and about kind of seeing how I can develop them than it is about myself. You know, I'm starting to consider myself, you know, finished from reaching this certain point, and now I can just kind of start to work, you know, see patients, try to impact the community, but also now at home, you know, I have a family to kind of develop and kind of see them, you know, execute their dreams. You know what I mean? And so, so what's next for me really is nothing different than just wanting to try to, you know, lock in and expand. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned 2 girls at home with your wife. Any more coming soon?
I have 2 girls. Layla, she's 9, and Alyssa, she is 6 years old, and my wife is pregnant now, so we're expecting. She's due in February. I'm sure she's watching now. Couldn't come because of that, but we're expecting. Y'all want to guess if it's a boy or a girl?
Yes.
What should I take?
Boy.
Boy. It's a girl.
Oh.
It's a girl. So yeah, I'm a girl dad, like all the way sold out at this point. which I've loved. Absolutely loved. Really happy to be having another girl, to be honest. And I think this is good. You know, I don't need to keep, trying to test the waters. You know, this is just it's good. You know, but honestly, they're a blessing. And I didn't grow up with sisters. I had a brother, two brothers, so it's different. Having girls. I have many girls in my household, so I'm trying to learn how to, figure that dynamic out, and it's been pretty cool. The love there is pretty real for a girl. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is so sweet. Thanks for sharing that. For those of us who are interested in your profession, what would you say we should keep in mind as we try to pursue that?
Interested in the profession, so I guess there's two things. Healthcare in general is a large industry, and what I mean by that is there are a lot of type of jobs that you can do, There are a lot of ways to take care of patients and impact their lives and help them out, and there's a lot more roles than just physician. Now, I wanted to be a doctor, and I think for anyone who wants to be a doctor, I say go for it. There's no reason not to, and I think being a physician, I think really means that you really seek to probably be one of the sort of the final voices in the room that can make a decision. Mm-hmm. It's not that you're necessarily in charge of everyone, right? Most healthcare systems now are a team, between the nurse and a social worker and a physical therapist. People are bringing their best to the table and their expertise, and so you let people do what they do best. Like, I'm not a nurse. I'm not going to tell a nurse how to do her job or his job, right? So there's a lot of people on a team, but the physician, you have a final say in some of the specific treatment plan. If there's a certain complaint, you may be the one to say, you know what, maybe this medicine, not that medicine. If you want to be that person, being a physician is kind of the job. I think those who like healthcare, they want to help people. The best advice I'd probably say now is find a way to get an opportunity to see multiple types of healthcare. That's one thing I didn't really do very, very well of when I was growing up, is seeing all the types of jobs out there. There's radiology technicians, there's x-ray technicians, people who are making like really good money, but they haven't actually needed to spend the same amount of years of commitment that I've made, because medicine is a very significant commitment to your life, and I think it's totally worth it. But I do think that it's something to kind of consider. And not everyone really understands that piece, and so they may be chasing a certain ideal about what it means to be a doctor, but then they might realize, like, you know what, I don't really need to do all that stuff exactly. Like, I'm happy being in the hospital, I'm happy being on the same team, I take care of patients, and that's it, and I'm good. So I think really kind of, diversify your knowledge about all the people who are on the team. Like, my biggest example of that is, had I grown a few more inches, okay, then I probably would have worked harder at basketball. Mm-hmm. I probably would have been someone who would have been an NBA hopeful. I'm not saying I was good enough, I'm just saying, and I was pretty good, but in my mind, I would have wanted to be an NBA. Like, what little person doesn't want to do that? And I started to think, if you look at a LeBron James or a Ja Morant or a Zion Williamson, that's one person, but there's a lot of people around that one individual. Like, there's a physical therapist who works on LeBron James every day. Mm-hmm. There's a personal trainer who's there, right, with him all the time, right? He has a coach. There's assistant. There's so many people who are right in the mix, and you don't know anything about those kind of jobs. All you know is NBA player, right? But if you saw, like, oh, I could be a personal trainer and work in the NBA, like, that's a fantastic goal, but a lot of us just don't know about it. So I think making yourself very aware of, if you have a one goal you like, learn every single person who's around that person, and you may find that you fit better in one role versus the other.
That is true. And I would say, too, in that respect, too, that for people who are pursuing that path, don't just try to go there for money. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really work out that way, because you'll find yourself very miserable at the end of the day. So thanks for sharing that. And for those of us who are in nursing school, myself and a few of us here, and those who are in medical school as well, we have finals coming up next week. Oof. What are some study tips that you could leave with us?
Study tips, I would say, well, it's already finals, so, if you ain't been paying attention at this point, then you might want to kind of reconsider. But no, honestly, I'd say, number one, I think about quality of study, versus quantity. So it's better to spend 2 minutes of high quality studying than it is to spend 2 hours of wasting your time on Facebook. Or not Facebook. Facebook is old. Instagram. No, never mind. TikTok. Whatever it might be, right? So if you spend 2 hours and you're so distracted the whole time, you're studying, but you're doing this, you're studying, but you're doing this, then you've kind of wasted your brain. But if you spend 2 minutes and you're like, yo, I'm a buckle down right now, spend 2 minutes and learn one concept all the way, that probably will be well more worth it than the 2 hours of just kind of wasting your time. And so I think you find a way to spend quality time studying, focus your efforts like in short spurts on getting a concept down or learning a certain fact down. Is probably better than kind of the long haul. And you actually find that you might end up studying a little bit less total than you do right now. When I was in medical school, as an example, many of us being Adventists, I try my best to respect the Sabbath and honor it and enjoy it, which meant that I didn't study from Friday night to pretty much Sunday morning. And if you know anything about being in nursing school or medical school or any kind of really like highly professional school, you're like studying 24/7. Like all the time, like almost to an unhealthy degree. And so taking a whole day off, like the Sabbath, is almost like detrimental to your potential success. And so I got colleagues who get a full 7 days, but I'm doing 6. And a full day of material can get you like the difference between a failing grade and a passing grade. So I had to learn quickly how to just treat my studying like a 9 to 5, I had a family at home, I had kids at home, and so I made sure I condensed my time into 9 to 5. That way when I got home in the evening, I wasn't bothering with studying. When I was on the weekends, Sabbath, I wasn't bothering with studying, and that all came from making my time more quality than just quantity. The last part I would say is, if you have a good idea of the type of test you're taking, if it's multiple choice, or if it's short answer essay, or if it's whatever it might be, I would probably align your study habit to the type of test you're going to take. And so if it's multiple choice, then you might want to study in a multiple choice type fashion, like practice questions, because that'll train your brain to see the questions and the answers in the way in which you're going to be tested on, And unfortunately, because we live in this country and everything is a test, you have to sort of study to the test, study in that type. So find a way that you're going to be tested and start studying in that version. That way, when you take the test, you're kind of best aligned for that. So that's as much as I can kind of give you in a few minutes.
Thank you for your time. And thank you for joining me up and being a part of this interview. We are at the end of the interview, and we have questions that we would like to ask you. Okay. So I will ask Vanessa to come up and ask questions that pertains to your profession.
Few questions from our online viewers. The first question is, you mentioned the signs of stroke. If while walking I observe someone having a stroke after calling 911, what can I do?
That's a good question. So you're saying if you see someone else you think is having a stroke, you've already done the best thing, which is call 911. I would stay with them. And I would lay this person down flat. There's a very scientific reason for that, and I'll tell you why. What a stroke is when you just lose blood supply to that part of the brain. It's usually blocked off some way. We have blood vessels in our neck, and they kind of go up like a tree branch into your brain, and so somewhere along that path, it's being blocked, usually by a blood clot. And so the other example I want to give you is if you kind of imagine like a bottle of water, that is laying down flat, like a half-filled bottle of water. It's laying down on the side, and the water is distributed evenly in the whole bottle. And as soon as you stand it up, all the water falls to the bottom. It's the same with the brain. And as soon as you stand up, like I might do right now, is the camera still here? Stand up. You lose a bit of blood supply to your brain just to kind of compensate for standing tall. So in folks who are having a stroke, if they lay down flat, you actually distribute that blood more evenly, and it gets to their brain faster. And that can keep their brain alive a little bit longer than if they were sitting straight up. And so oftentimes someone comes to the hospital, if they come through the ambulance and they're laying down flat in the ambulance, and then they come to me, and if they bring them into the hospital and they sit them right up, someone's symptoms will get worse when they sit up. You know, so their arm was getting better while they were laying down flat, and they sit them up, and after a few minutes, their arm starts getting weak again. And I'm like, no, lay them down flat. Now lay them down flat, and all of a sudden their arm is strong again, because we're trying to get blood flow back to the brain. So if you're there and you're a bystander, you've already done the best you can do. There's not any need for any medications, not any need for anything else to do besides wait for an ambulance to come. But if they're sitting up straight, I would probably advise them to lay down flat wherever they could.
Interesting, thank you. Our second question is pretty much a three-part question. The first one, what are some of the early signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's?
Of what? So, of Alzheimer's?
Yes, Alzheimer's.
Oh, that's a good question. So, you know, Alzheimer's is a disorder of memory loss. It is a neurodegenerative disease, meaning that your brain is starting, or some parts of the brain is starting to degenerate, and you're starting to kind of die off. And so, you know, it mostly affects people's memory. And so, you know, there are some more specific types of memory issues that folks with Alzheimer's have than someone else who is just kind of forgetful. I think that's kind of a big deal, but trying to decide, am I just forgetful or am I having Alzheimer's disease? It's really difficult to tell you that right now on stage, but I would say when you're forgetting things that are extremely familiar to you, I get more concerned. So that would be like, you don't remember your child's name, you know? It's different from just like, oh, I forgot, you know, like I left my keys over here and then I just forgot them for 2 seconds. Things that are very familiar to you. You know, if you're driving around, let's say you always leave your house and you always drive 2 blocks to the gas station and get gas. And you leave that time and you're starting to forget how to get to that gas station. That's a familiar memory to you. And so the most familiar of memories, faces, names, how to do things, you know, like brushing teeth or combing hair. These are things that you've just been doing them for so long, you don't even got to think about how to do them, right? And so when you start kind of losing some of those functions or that kind of memory, you know, that's kind of problem. I'd say, you know, Alzheimer's is a tough condition, you know, because we're not yet at the stage where we are curing it. I say yet because there's a lot of good things on the horizon, but I would say that getting tested, even when you have some small memory concerns, is a good idea. And the testing, if you want to write this down, what I recommend is basically a cognitive test or a neuropsychological testing. What they do pretty much is put you in a room, they make you do puzzles, they make you memorize things, they make you draw circles, they kind of do all kind of testing. But what it does is it gives you a baseline of, okay, what is my level of cognition right now? Like, basically, how is my brain doing? How am I thinking right now, you know, for my level of education and everything? And that way, when you do that testing, then let's say something changes 5 years from now, you would have had some baseline testing to know, like, objectively, this is where I was. Because sometimes it's hard to tell even yourself, you know. I mean, you might be thinking, am I forgetting something? Or the family is saying that, and everything might be a little bit biased and subjective, and so getting some objective, formalized testing will let you know, and let everyone else know exactly where you are. So, hope that answered the question.
Okay. Our next question, still on the topic of Alzheimer's. What can be done to prevent it?
Prevent Alzheimer's. You're trying to hit me with the toughest questions in the world. No, I'm playing. No, this is what I do. So I was telling one of our elders here, he stepped on the stage a few minutes ago, and he talked to me about memory. He's fascinated with memory, and so am I. And when I was in a research lab, and so I did my Ph.D. I'm a neuroscientist as well, and so when I was in my research lab, I studied a certain part of the brain. It's called the hippocampus. Right? No need to memorize it, but hippocampus, and sort of on the outside left and right part of your brain, and that's the center for learning and memory. Now, I'm gonna teach you something real quick, so you take your pens and pencils out and follow me. So there's certain type of cells that are found in that certain spot. Now, for the most of the brain, unlike the rest of the body, we don't really get new brain cells. When they die, they don't come back. That's why stroke is so devastating, right? As soon as you have a stroke, a lot of people don't get those functions back, unlike any brain condition. And so it's not like your skin cells where you get new skin every day, or you get new nails, or you get new hair, right? You regenerate your liver. It's not that way. The brain, unfortunately just dies. However, there's about 1 or 2 places in the brain where you get brand new brain cells every single day. One is in olfactory bulb, that's the spot for smell. And the other part is in the hippocampus, the center for learning and memory. So these cells are born brand new every day throughout your entire life. And they're the center for learning and memory, right? And we're talking about Alzheimer's disease and memory. And so the next question is, how do you get yourself to form new brain cells, right? Because the more brand new brain cells you get, the less memory issues you're going to have, because you're not having all these cells die. In fact, you're having new ones grow. And so the number one way that I have learned from my research and from everything I've read since then has been exercise. And I don't say that just to say it as like everybody just exercise and diet. I mean it as it's been tested, It's been tested in a number of different types of models, like rats and mice and rabbits, and they do these things, right? They have them literally run the treadmill a lot more than others would, and then look at their brain and see, oh, you've got way more brain cells because you've been running on a treadmill than someone else. And so, I like that it's not complicated. It doesn't require a medicine, you don't have to put any toxins in your body. So as much as you possibly can, the more you exercise, the more you stimulate something called neurogenesis, right? Genesis is the beginning, and neuro is the brain, and that's how you form new brain cells. And so exercise is the number one way to stimulate new cells being born, which would be one of the best ways to fight against potential Alzheimer's. That kind of makes sense, y'all? Y'all follow me? All right. We're getting there.
Okay. And our last question, still on the topic of Alzheimer's, are there any particular foods that can help slow the process?
Y'all trying to mess me up today. These are good questions. So we'll talk some science again, okay? That's the best way I can try to explain it. Alzheimer's being death of certain types of brain cells, there's a certain process that happens that leads to more brain cells dying. And it's more than one kind of process. But one that I think a lot of us have been familiar with the term has probably been inflammation. So inflammation is really just a big term for irritation, right, of any part of the body. Of the brain, in the brain specifically, irritation means that you have, basically chaos happening, around those brain cells that cause it to die. And so if inflammation is one of the main things that can lead towards it, then naturally what I want is an anti-inflammatory. I'm trying to reduce the amount of inflammation that's in my brain or that's in my entire body. And so the recommendations are things that are going to be really helpful to your entire health, but then specifically helpful to your brain. And so there are a number of natural things that are anti-inflammatory, stuff that's like garlic, stuff that's like turmeric, things that help to reduce your overall level of inflammation, kind of reduces that chaos that's happening in the brain. I'm not going to tell you that I think that there is one specific path that I know is a direct preventative to that particular disease, because if I'm being honest with you, beyond some of our just normal health stuff, all of us as humans are fighting against a lot of genetic stuff. There's stuff that you got in your body that ain't got nothing to do with you. And I don't care what kind of vegan you are. Some things are overcome by just what you're born with, And so some of our Alzheimer's has a large genetic component. And so I don't know about prevention, but I do know about what we talked about earlier about treatment. And so, as opposed to thinking that I can prevent all of the DNA stuff that's come and passed, from Adam down to me, I can still target and try to, slow that process, as you mentioned. So the exercise, I think, is still a good preventative / slowing the process, kind of sticking to something that's more anti-inflammatory in nature. What I mean by that, foods that are just unhealthy are going to get more inflammation in your body, right? Things that are processed is the best way to put it. I don't advocate for any particular diet except for to say the less processed stuff that you eat, the better. The more stuff you find that's naturally occurring, like, oh, that grew out of the ground. I'm gonna eat that. It's not something that grew out of the ground and then took like 20 years in a factory to come to you. They have to process it to keep it fresh to get to you. So the more processing that happens, the more you're gonna have things that are inflammatory in nature and then probably lead towards that. So, I think the things that we do already, especially in this type of church where we try our best to eat healthy, I think are great deals. Just add that exercise to it. Don't sleep on that.
Thanks for sharing that. We have a few more questions in-house. Thank you online for submitting your questions. Those are some really good questions. Are you sweating, doctor? You sweating?
I get these questions all the time, and I'm going to say honestly, people just want answers,
Yep.
and that I get, they want answers, and every time I have a patient comes to the office, sometimes they're like, I finally have a neurologist right here. I'm about to ask every brain question I possibly have, and there's almost not enough time for it. But I try to do my best to, give people at least some kind of roadmap, something to kind of think about on kind of how to address these in their life. So yeah, it's all good.
Thanks for sharing that. A question coming from the back.
Yes, good evening. I just want, the question I want to ask is, what causes the brain to bleed when one has a stroke?
What causes it to bleed?
Yes.
The question? Okay. So now look, y'all asking questions, right? That means y'all ready to learn, okay? Y'all got to put your thinking caps on. So there are essentially two different types of stroke, okay? One is called ischemia. Everybody say ischemia. And the other one is a bleeding kind of a stroke, as we're talking about. Ischemia is when you just lose oxygen. So the type that we talk about first is, if you get a blockage in a blood vessel, you're not getting blood to that part of the brain, you're not getting oxygen there. That's how those brain cells die. That's one type of stroke. That's the most common kind of stroke. The other kind of stroke, what you're asking about, is a bleeding type. So there are actually two different types. The most common reason for a bleeding in the brain is high blood pressure. It's not like I got upset, I was driving the day, my pressure went high and I had a bleed. No, it's high blood pressure like over time. So it tends to be those who either are untreated or unaware, or they have some really difficult issue where the blood pressure is just staying high no matter what they do. So there are changes that happen to your blood vessels that make them more weak over time. So it's not that one random spike of a high number. In fact, it's that it's been kind of high and uncontrolled probably for some long amount of time. And then eventually the blood vessel that's trying to hold all that blood with that high pressure gets weak and it breaks open, and that's how the bleeding happens. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
One more question. Oh. Wow. Wow.
Well, that exercise is going to keep that blood pressure down too, okay?
We have one more question at the front. Wait, 1 second.
Okay. Is a hemorrhage what's the difference between a hemorrhage and the stroke? A hemorrhage and the stroke, what's the difference?
The difference between hemorrhage and a stroke, is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't give the word, but that's a good question. So I already told you guys ischemia, right? So there's ischemic stroke. That's when you have a blood vessel that's blocking and you don't get blood and you don't get oxygen. And then the bleeding kind of stroke is a hemorrhagic stroke, a hemorrhage stroke. So the hemorrhage is a bleeding stroke. Does that make sense? So they are the same thing.
I had a cousin that passed away in 1986. She had a hemorrhage, so she was internal bleeding.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Condolences. We have one more question.
Hello, Isaiah. So, since you study the brain, I'm sure you're familiar with the text where you constantly remember the text, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So, what are your tips on, like from what you learned through your experience in school studying the brain? What's your tips on, like, I guess, tricking our brains to do the things that we want to do? And that's not just like in rehearsal, like you said, brushing your teeth, or to get us on the path, like to break, like if we want to go into habits, how can we trick our brains? Like, what's your top 5 techniques to kind of guide us to where we don't, just stay back on a routine, this is what I do, but kind of, pushing our mind higher to achieve what we want to do? What's your strategies on that?
That's a good question. That's a tough one, I think, to be honest. I feel like, and this is not going to be something that I'm going to tell you that I feel like I master, okay? Because I'm a neurologist doesn't mean that I mastered everything on how to affect the brain or how to use the brain. But I will say that although you mentioned, not really rehearsing, there is something about kind of practicing. But I think the trick, so to speak, is doing things that are in small bursts of practice. So what I mean by that, I think if you say you want to be a person who reads every day, you want to be a person who reads every day and starts reading books, you can make large goals, and I think you can make small goals. And I think it's very natural to understand that probably a smaller goal is probably going to be easier to meet than a large goal, right? If I wanted to take 2 steps, I could probably take that. But if I want to, run like Clint, it's probably going to be a little more work involved, right? So I think the trick is, I think the misconception, though, is that we sometimes are reaching for something that's very high, and because we don't get there immediately, your brain now reacts by being depressed by trying to meet that goal, Every time New Year's comes around, you set the loftiest goals in the world, and your brain gets accustomed to setting a high goal and never meeting it. And you keep bringing your ability down to be able to do all goals you want to do. Instead, if you took something and said, I'm going to do something small. So for instance, back to reading. If you want to be a person that reads every day, you can say, like I said earlier, I am going to read for 1 minute every day. You can do that. And when you start doing it, you will now be the person who reads every single day. Is it 2 novels? No. But have you read every day? Yes. Are you reaching your goal? Yes, right? But what happens naturally then is that you're probably going to read more than 1 minute. Eventually, you're probably going to, you know what? That was typed short. Like reading a minute takes less than a minute, And so then you might read more, And so I think naturally what I would probably recommend in terms of a trick is to kind of just make small goals, And that's not really anything extremely neuroscience related. I think probably even more a psychologist or psychiatrists will have even a better idea about that. But I would say, smaller goals, get your brain used to knowing what it feels like to reach a goal. And don't give yourself things your brain gets accustomed to. Oh, I can never reach those goals, so I'm gonna just stop putting the work in. Give it something small, accomplish it, feel that out, and then keep doing it. And as soon as I leave here, I'm gonna try the same thing.
Good evening. Thank you for coming, and thank you for being young, gifted, and black. And also, you said, I'm one of those people, I'm into math and science and health, and you said that exercise, which I believe exercise and nutrition does a lot for the body. So what else can we do to help our memory other than exercise?
Exercise.
That's all?
That's all.
So the 3 exercise and exercise.
You don't want to exercise? you don't want to exercise?
I want to exercise and exercise.
Let's
all
do
right.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm joking with you. It's a good question. The reason why I mentioned that is because, as far as I've read so far, that is one of the most effective ways that we've studied and been able to actually see brain cells grow. So it's not that there are not other things that can be done. It's just that, it's just very impressive to me that, when I say see them grow, I mean that, actually, and this is, this might be a little gross for some of y'all, but, research, uses animal models, and so I have seen an animal brain, like a mouse brain, and I've seen one that didn't exercise, and I've seen another one that exercises, and the difference is astronomical. And then we've seen that in human brains after they've died. Obviously, we're not testing people, right? This is just after, if someone donates themselves, we can see and say, oh, you know what? The same thing we were testing in the lab, we actually see it happening in real life in people. So, I think all the things that we already sort of, I think, like the SDA Church, for instance, we boast a very big health message, right? So I think eating as best as you possibly can is of course, going to be helpful. But I say exercise specifically because it has not only benefits to the brain, but it has like every other benefit you could think of. Cardiovascular, your heart health, your blood vessel health, your blood pressure, So it's like, because it does so many things, it's a no-brainer for me to always advise it, because it'll do way more for you than you kind of think it will.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question. I didn't waste my years coming up, but I helped others perceive their dreams, and now I have to help myself perceive my dreams. And I always wanted to be a doctor in psychology. So, being that I'm 56, do you think it's too late for me to pursue that dream?
So he's asking if it is too late for him to pursue his dreams in psychology at the age of 60 now.
Too late? You breathing, right? Enough said. No, I'm playing. No, I don't think it's too late. I mean, I'll tell you, when I was in medical school just a few years ago, I had a classmate of mine. He was 54. Mm-hmm. And just starting, he was just starting, I mean, I'm hopeful of having a full career in medicine. And this gentleman next to me was just starting medical school, and he's probably gonna start working and then retire. As soon as he reaches his goal, he's gonna retire. But he wanted to do it, I say, and this is regardless of age, I think, knowing what you wanna go into, right? Some of these are very, very highly competitive fields, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. And my take is understand the risks of what you're going into, and as long as you can tolerate that risk, it's worth doing. If you know it's going to take 2 years or 4 years or 6 or 8 or 10, and you're okay with that, there's no reason that you shouldn't do it. I always wanted to make sure that as I was, spending my time on my journey trying to get there, that I was able to contribute to my family and take care of things I needed to take care of. So if I can check that box, but then still also pursue my dream, then I would do it. And I mean, at this point, what's the rush? You can take your time. You can do it the way you want to do it. And honestly, a lot of folks who are more mature in age, like yourself, who go into careers, you tend to have a much better mindset of how you want to use your degree than the 20-year-old doing the same degree. Because many of us just went to college, just got a degree, and now we're like, what do I do with it? I don't really know, right? But you've been living, and you see a need, you see people, you see how you want to impact people, so you're someone who can come in and then say, you know what, I want to get this degree because I know getting it is going to help me impact in this exact kind of way, So, I'm not as mature in age as you, but I'd say, if you want to do it, why not?
Oh, it's okay. So I just don't have a question. I just wanted to add on what you were saying about the memory, as well as to answer the other two sisters' questions about how to improve your memories. The other things besides exercise includes like increasing your water intake. If you have like crosswords or word search puzzles, like any brain activity games that make you think and analyze more deeply, those are also very important, as well as if you think you're forgetting anything, at the end of the day you should keep a journal. And what you do is, at the end of the day, you should write down everything you did in that day and see how much you remember about your days.
Thank you for that.
My question is, I heard you say that you get new brain cells as they relate to smell. Did I hear you correctly?
Correct.
Okay. February coming would make 2 years since I have lost my smell because of COVID. I have regained 50% of my smell. And I would really like to know what I can do to get the other 50 back.
That's a good question. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I don't know. You gonna answer that?
Yes.
Oh, I got
so
it. Go for it.
I don't know how much like zinc your body has. So I'm basically a trained medical missionary, and I work upstate at a sanitarium called Beacon of Hope. So what I'm hearing from you is also correct. So it's like a little bounce back, and I'm like, yeah, that's refreshing my memory about certain things as well. But if you're low on zinc, it's gonna like hinder that as well. So I know someone who has been having that same issue but years prior to COVID. And now that they've been increasing their zinc level, it's actually been helping them as well. So you can try that, like having your pumpkin seeds, as well as any foods. You can look it up on Google, foods that are high in zinc, leafy green vegetables. You can try eating more of those, and you'll just see some difference coming in. Just try that and see how it works for you.
The growth of the new cells. What can you add to that?
I would say, so it's the same. It's the same as in the memory center. So when we studied it, and thanks for helping to answer, when we studied it, the same amount of growth that was happening in the memory area was happening in the olfactory bulb area. So exercise is still an answer. Number two, I think in your situation, and anyone who's kind of similar is probably going to require a little bit of testing that I don't have available right now. There is an incredible amount of conditions that you wouldn't believe that are neurologic symptoms that come from like being deficient or being or having too much of certain vitamins. And so oftentimes I have people come and they may have numbness or tingling somewhere. They may have some memory fog, especially because of, post-COVID is a big one. Smell, brain fog, kind of, there's some symptoms. But then I checked their vitamin B12, and it's stupid low. It's so low that I'm like, we've got to take care of that, because healthy nerves and neurons in the brain rely upon several different factors, and a lot of them are vitamins and minerals. I mean, all your body does, but specifically when someone has neurologic symptoms, those are the kind of things that I want to make sure are not deficient, because that could very well easily be. And the amount of symptoms, sometimes I can't even explain it. People have some weird complaints. I don't know what's going on. And I check their B12 and it's low. And I'm like, well, I don't know what it is, but you need some B12. And then we start giving them B12 and their symptoms go away. And I still was never able to tell them for sure exactly what it was, but it might have been related to that. So I think you may need a little bit of extra testing. I would just make sure you have like your vitamin D and your vitamin B12, like tested to know if they're in a good range. And if they're not, that's an added benefit to the health of your nerves that may kind of help with some of those regeneration and kind of getting better. All I have heard from COVID so far with smell has been kind of what you're saying. 50 to 70% people get their smell back. I haven't heard a lot of folks with like the 100% for those who've lost it, but that's just kind of so far. And we're only just now studying it, so we don't have any data beyond today.
We have another question from our online viewer. Actually, it's actually from our own Pastor Nixon. He asks, what are the best preventative measures to avoid getting a stroke? Best foods, diet, exercise? Is there a good disposition to have?
What's the last part? Good what?
Sorry, is there a good disposition to have?
A good disposition?
Yes.
Okay. So I would start by saying the most common cause of having strokes are high blood pressure and diabetes and high cholesterol. Those are the, like, ask any neurologist or any doctor, they're probably going to tell you something similar. The most common. There's a few other types of causes, things that are a little more rare and they don't apply to everyone, but by far the most common, are those three. I know that. I practice right now in Atlanta. If I showed you a map of the country right now, you would see that the South and the Southeast probably has the highest proportion of stroke in our country. They actually call it the stroke belt. Like the Bible Belt, it's called the stroke belt. And like Atlanta and like Alabama are considered the buckle of the belt. So I say that to say that I see a lot more stroke than a neurologist will see here in New York City. And still, by far, high blood pressure, diabetes, and high cholesterol. So, a lot of folks who have strokes, they're coming in and they may have one or more of those things not really well regulated. It may be the cholesterol. The reason why is cholesterol will build cholesterol plaques in your blood vessel, and it just blocks it from getting blood flow there. Diabetes just does everything evil to the body. I'm not even going to go into more than that. You're losing feet and toes, having strokes, kidney disease, you name it, right? And then high blood pressure, as you mentioned before, high blood pressure changes your blood vessels. It makes them weak, and it also can have them bleeding, but it also makes them stiff and adds to those plaques that are in the blood vessel. So those are three kind of most common things. So I would for sure not ignore those, right, in terms of our prevention, And so if your diabetes is, you've been kind of acting up, you need to get that A1C down, and those of you who have diabetes know what I'm talking about, right? High blood pressure the same way, as well as your cholesterol. I said that to say that all three of these things are not only curable, but they're preventable by the same stuff we've been talking about, and which is your exercise and dieting, As an example, my wife is pregnant now. We've been looking at, as an example, her blood sugars and making sure they stay in a normal range, during pregnancy. And we've had to look at the diet more carefully, like, how much stuff really is in this food, And you'd be astounded when you actually look and to figure out, like, what's in food and what's due to your body. And so I think the more you can kind of pay attention to that, you'll find that these things are treatable. You can cure diabetes, you can cure high blood pressure, you can cure high cholesterol, and then you can prevent it from happening at all. So those are the most common types, so I would not send someone on a goose chase on different ways to prevent stroke that are not relevant to the most common reasons. I think kind of take care of those things gives you the best chance of preventing stroke in the future. Oh, want to know the number? So that's a good question. I'll answer that really quickly. So does anyone know the recommendation number of cholesterol when it should be lower than this number? Huh? So 200 is the number, right? But here's what I want to make sure you're aware of. There is total cholesterol. Why do they say total? That's because it's made up of multiple different types of factors. And you've all heard of good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. So you want that total number to be less than 200, but even sometimes, even if it's less than 200, your bad cholesterol may be so high and the good cholesterol is so low that your total is still under the right number, right? So that bad cholesterol, you can write this down, is the one that's called LDL. That's the bad cholesterol. And you want that to be less than 70. Less than 70, 70 for the LDL. Again, so if your LDL is 130 and your other cholesterol is just 50, then that's only 180 and you look like you're doing pretty good, but in fact, you're not. So it's important to know the total number, but it's also important to know the breakdown of cholesterol, and you can't get that at a little health fair. The health fair, when they stick you, they only give you the total number. They don't give you that breakdown number, so you have to actually go to the lab at your doctor or a lab and get that actual lab done. Yeah. Cool.
What's the number for the HDL?
HDL, just higher than 50 and beyond.
We have one more question.
All right, good evening, Dr. Rolle. Thank you so much for being here. My our first question is, are you a Knicks fan, being from New York?
You said Knicks?
Yeah.
I'm a Knicks fan.
Yes, sir. My second question is, were there any mentors or mirrors that you were able to look to, talk to, and learn from along your medical journey, and what was their impact?
Mentors? So I would say, when I grew up in Tab, right, there were specifically two physicians who I remember, the two female women physicians who I would have some occasional conversation with, but I never really got a chance to spend a lot of time with them, so I kind of knew who they were. They knew I wanted to be in medicine. But beyond that, the answer basically is no. Didn't have any mentors. I didn't have any family in medicine specifically. And then, I went through college, had a few professors. They were not physicians, mostly kind of Ph.D. types, and they just kind of teach classroom. And so really, when I was like at Oakwood and around that time period, I was still clueless. Like, I knew the things that I kind of was supposed to do, but, having had someone to be able to say like, oh, like Isaiah, you should think about this right now actually and kind of get this in order, probably would have kind of saved me some heartache along the way. My first official mentorship came when I was already in medical school. And it came because there was a program, there was a hospital in the city, I was in Ohio, that partnered with the medical school, and it was all about diversity and trying to pretty much increase minorities in medicine. And so I was able to get into that program where they paired me with a mentor. And I was paired with this black male stroke neurologist when I was like a second year med student. And so he is my official first actual mentor. Like, he's a person that I would text like right now, like, yo, I'm looking at this, what do you think about it, type of thing. And so it was very difficult because there's a lot of things that, I don't know, I feel like my grades were pretty okay, like coming up through elementary and high school, I had pretty good support. So I thought it was gonna just be easy. I thought like, yeah, I'm gonna be a doctor. So I'm gonna just turn out and just be one, like you just do it. And you start realizing that even though I was able to navigate most of my life up until that point, you start getting to a place where you really just don't know the answer. You're like, I just don't know what to do. Like, I want someone to know what they've done before and be able to say, choose this option, trust me, I know it. So that kind of came like pretty late for me, but it came with the right timing. It came at God timing, honestly, to kind of help me propel my career. Because if I didn't have mentors even at that stage, even though I had gotten to medical school, I could have still been someone very much easily not practicing medicine. I could have not graduated from medical school or even graduated and had a degree and still not had a job, because there's so much that has to happen even when you get to that stage that you realize like, this is hard. And it's lonely, and there are not that many, black people in medicine to begin with. And so when I'm in an environment where the majority of my colleagues are not black, most of them are white, there's something that happens there too that kind of makes it a little bit difficult for someone like myself. And so, yeah. So to answer your question, I didn't really. I kind of came a little late, but it did come at a great time. And that's why I'm kind of really, I'm super open, because, I tell people things all the time that I never heard when I was like in high school, never heard when I was in college, never even heard when I was in med school, that I think makes an easy difference in their experience kind of going forward.
Okay, Dr. Rolle, we have another online question. You mentioned LDL should be under 70. So I recently did my physical, and the doctor said my LDL is over 200. Is that really bad?
Yes. It's very bad. I will make an extra comment on that, though. Right? It's not that simple. Some of us, and many of us who have cholesterol issues, are probably going to be from lifestyle. To keeping it real, you know, what you eat, what you do, you're probably going to have that kind of cholesterol. But then there's others of us that have a super high number, and it has nothing to do with your diet. And this is why, like, you got to see your doctor, and you have to kind of know what's going on with your own body. Some people have, again, this is a DNA family issue where there are conditions that cause you to have high cholesterol no matter what. You cannot do anything about the fact that you have high cholesterol. You know, best diet in the world, best exercise, yet your numbers are super high. That's probably because you have a genetic condition that causes your cholesterol to be very high. So I don't know if your 200 is because of your lifestyle, or if your 200 is because you're fighting against other factors that are not very common. And for those people, they've got to see a specialist. You know, there's actually people who specialize in cholesterol, like doctors who go into lipids, and there are clinics that are dedicated just to cholesterol issues. And so I would find out which category you're in. If you're doing all the right things, are you taking your statin? Are you taking your Zetia, right? Are you taking all these medications that they may be trying? And if you are, and it's still that high, you may be fighting against a different issue that you kind of need some genetic testing for. And then there's a whole different category of treatments that are designed for you than would be for the rest of us.
I'm sorry, Doc, I need to ask that question. So I'm looking at the HDL. If your doctor tells you that your HDL, the good cholesterol, it's low and you're at risk of getting a heart attack, what is next? If your HDL is 31 and they tell you that you're at risk of getting a heart attack, what's next? What can you do?
So she wants to know if what's next to do for her if her HDL is 31. The good cholesterol.
Good cholesterol. Cholesterol is everything is good, but your HDL.
So you're talking about you wanting to raise
Yes.
the good cholesterol?
Yes,
Okay.
they say exercise and drink red wine, but you do all of that and it's still low.
So the good cholesterol is made up mostly of a certain type of fat. Okay, so there's certain types of fats that are really good, others that are really bad. So the type of HDL is made up of a certain type of fat. They're usually the omega-3 fatty acids. Am I right about that? She was saying before I even said it. So the omega-3s are basically good kind of fats. They're found highly in fish, out of olive oil, stuff like that. So the more you increase your diet in that type of fat, the more likely you are to increase the HDL number. It's just what they're made of, and they're made of that same kind of lipid. So I would increase your intake of omega-3 fatty acids. That could be through the form of a supplement, but I think it's better to just kind of eat the right stuff that has it in there. And you can easily just look up like foods that are rich in omega-3s and start increasing your diet more of that. Your HDL should go up because of it. Yeah.
That was super informative. Thank you very much, Dr. Rolle. Did you learn something? Yes. Okay, give him a hand, give him a hand.
Y'all try to stretch me to the limit here. This was all free advice today.
He has more free advice coming, but I'm going to call for the offertory, and after the offertory, you'll hear more from Dr. Rolle. Be sure to give generously. Thank you. Here's a video on ways to give.
We know that you are so excited to give to the Adventist Youth Ministries here at the Ephesus Seventh-day Adventist Church at the heart of Harlem. Scan the QR code and it will take you to Adventist Giving, where you can click More Offering Categories and select AYM. Enter the amount you would like to give and scroll down and click Continue. You will then have 3 options: log into your existing account, create an account, or make a one-time donation as a guest. You can also use Cash App, $ Ephesus SDA NYC. Please put AYM as the note. The last 2 ways that you can give are by mailing it in or dropping it off to 101 West 123rd Street, New York, New York, 10027. These are the ways that you can give to the Adventist Youth Ministries here at the Ephesus Seventh-day Adventist Church at the heart of Harlem.
So I'm trusting that you did take the advice and you have given generously. And for that, we would like to pray and thank the Lord for what we have received and will receive, because you're hearing me nudge you now to give generously. Let us pray. Dear righteous and eternal Father, I just want to thank you for being in our midst at this time. Thank you for providing for us this offering, and bless those who gave and those who did not have to give. You know their heart and you know their situation. Bless them now, Lord, and let the rivers of your abundance flow in their houses and over them. Continue to keep us, continue to protect us, and thank you so much, Lord, for the Sabbath. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. And without further ado, Dr. Rolle.
So I would say really quickly, thank you for Ephesus to having me, Clint and Amoy for, reaching out and having me. It's been a good time. And also for everyone coming here and those watching online, the questions were dope. Yeah, I tried to stretch my brain to the limit because you asked the right questions, you asked the tough questions. And please follow them up with your own doctor, to confirm it and to keep it going, if you're really interested. I wanted to give a few words of inspiration on success, if that's okay with y'all. And I wrote a little bit of thing here that I'll kind of read and talk about it in a second here. So a question that I tend to get throughout my life when I'm in these situations is, how did I make it? How did I make it to where I'm at? Which I think is the answer is complicated and also simple. I've got my mom in the crowd here. I have my wife who's watching. God has been through all of it. And so the answer is kind of simple, but also kind of complex. There's not just one formula to how someone makes it. And whenever I think about making it, I immediately think about making it out of the hood. That's just, I love hood stories. And so my mind goes there when I hear that question, how do you make it? And I love movies, and there's a particular movie I want to talk about. It's a very classic, it's an old black film that I'm not sure many of our youth today will probably know what this film is, but let me see if you can finish the title for this movie. The movie is called Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood. Yeah, ever heard of that one before? So this isn't exactly a Sabbath movie, and I'm not making any recommendations to watch it, but since I have seen it, I want to kind of describe to you a little bit about the movie. So it's a 1996, it's a black film, it's a comedy, it's set in LA, and it kind of pokes fun at a number of black films that were set around that time, okay? So these were like African-American coming of age, hood films, as it were, that were, I think sometimes gives commentary on the topic of making it out. And so these were films such as like Juice, which stars Tupac. And if you know any other titles, you can finish it for me. So this first one is called Poetic Justice, okay. That's with Janet Jackson and Tupac again. There's Above the Rim, also starring Tupac. There's Jungle Fever, that stars Samuel L. Jackson and Halle Berry. There's South Central, right, good, okay. South Central. There's Higher Learning, that's Omar Epps and Ice Cube. There's Friday also has Ice Cube and Chris Tucker. There's Dead. What was that? Dead Presidents with Chris Tucker and Lorenz. Again, these are not Sabbath movies. There's Menace 2. Okay, yep. With Lorenz Tate and Jada Pinkett. There's a Spike Lee joint called Do the Right Thing. There's New Jack, okay, with Wesley Snipes and Ice-T. And then most prominently, there's Boys in the Hood, right. And that has, I hear the Adventists going hard right now. They know these movies. Cuba Gooding Jr. and Lawrence Fishburne. So the movie I'm talking about is, again, the title borrows its name from multiple of those films as you get it, right? So it's, don't be, a menace to South Central while drinking juice in the hood. And even though it's a comedy, I think it kind of offers some commentary on the topic of making it out of the hood. So I'm gonna describe one scene for you. There are two cousins. There's names Trey and Loke Dog, okay? They're cousins, and they're walking another character named Malik through the streets of LA, and it's Malik's first day of college ever, and they're proud of him, right? So they're walking him through his first day of college, and Trey is the one who's aspiring to great things. He's like the everyday character. He wants to do great in life. He even asks Malik, how does it feel to be on your first day of college? Loke Dog, on the other hand, he's a drug dealer. He's into gang violence. He doesn't want anything positive in his life. They kind of ask him if he's going to get his GED, and he jokes and says, I'm trying to get my JOB. So this is kind of two opposing kind of characters. But they're both equally proud of Malik on his first day of college. And then there's Malik, who's kind of right in the middle. He's kind of a cross between both of them. He's seen this hood life, but now he's kind of transcending beyond the hood. He's gotten into a share of fights, but he's never going to get jumped again. He's no stranger to running from the cops, but he's gotten out of trouble, and he's not been in jail. He understands baby mama drama, but he doesn't have any kids of his own. He understands what it means to hustle to eat, but he gave his last bite to his siblings. He gets the peer pressure. He lived in the projects, but he's not able to kind of get away from that feeling embarrassed about bringing people to his home for fear of seeing in living spaces. He moves beyond an environment where he doesn't feel embarrassed for wanting to learn. And he doesn't have to worry about that anymore, right? He's going to college. Malik is going to do that. He's going to start a new life. He's going to get to start over. He gets to be who he truly wants to be. And Malik, in this situation, he's made it out. But now, Trey and Loke Dog and Malik, they're all walking to the staircase, top of the college steps, at the final point before Malik goes on to a college campus. And it's a briefly emotional scene because Trey and Loke Dog are extremely proud of Malik. It's obvious that Trey wants to follow in his footsteps, and you can imagine that even Loke Dog is kind of looking on and he has some regret about his own life choices. That could have been him, but it's kind of too late now. So now Malik, he's moving towards the college steps. He's interrupted by Trey, the bright-eyed and curious one who says, hey, yo, Malik, don't forget about us, baby. It's just an attempt to hold on longer for a moment that he wants to have. He wants that connection to stay open. He wants to make it too. And Malik replies, hey, one love, baby. And he turns and he walks onto the campus. As Malik is walking away, Trey and Loke Dog are left in a moment of silence, watching Malik take his first few steps on his first day of college. What could be going through their minds? The two stand together, and then Trey breaks the silence. He says, Malik is the first one in the hood to go to college. Finally, he exclaims, finally, someone from the hood is going to make it. And then Loke Dog, he seemingly inspired, replies, yeah, there is hope. They turn, and then they walk away. And as promised, this is a comedy, and in that precious moment, Malik gets shot. And Trey and Loke Dog, they're totally unaware. Their backs are turned, they're walking away feeling good about life because Malik is in college, and right behind him, he just got shot. And so it's a hilarious but a kind of sobering climax to a rather emotional scene, which highlights to me that simply making it out is not enough. And so, many of you, I think watching or here, could be aspiring to great things, but you just can't, walk the first few steps of success and then pat yourself on the back and proud of your accomplishments, noticing that you're still going to be at risk. There's a phrase by Booker T. Washington that says that success should be measured not by the position that someone has reached in life as much by the obstacles they've overcome. And so obstacles, it reminds me of an obstacle course. You ever been on one before? I'm not talking about the bounty house. I'm talking about like a real obstacle course. It takes grit to get through it. You have to, get to a goal no matter what. And if you see a person who's gotten through the end of an obstacle course, you're going to see them as a victor, someone who's completed that race. But you haven't experienced every individual obstacle that they actually encountered along their way, right? You didn't feel the sweat on their brow. You didn't feel the blood on their scraped knees. You didn't feel the muscles that were torn and stretched to make biceps and triceps. You didn't fully understand each rope, each ladder, each tire, each barbed wire, mentally and physically hitting a wall, but overcoming each one, each time. But that, my friend, is how Booker T. Washington suggests that we measure success. And by that logic alone, anyone here can be considered successful even having never reached the finish line. I'm talking about your life. So what might your finish line be? Life can often seem like a moving target, one trial down, on to the next. So go ahead and measure the obstacles overcome. In fact, not only do I measure obstacles overcome, but now I celebrate failures and those failures that are overcome. Because every time I'm in that position, I can see where I count the success. And so now I love to shout that I'm a failure. And don't let me preach right now and recite Jesus in saying that his grace is sufficient for you and how his strength is made perfect in your weakness. So whatever challenges, whatever weaknesses, if you can overcome them, no matter where you end up, or whatever your titles are behind your name, you can call yourself successful. Most people have no problem taking ownership over their successes. A different take is that there's something to be gained for taking responsibilities of your failures. Ultimately, failures can provide you the ability to learn and grow from your mistakes. There were a lot of times, and I can talk to you offline about this, that things were not going well for me. My test scores didn't add up. I was meeting with faculty who told me I would not make it to where I would be, literally, the word for word. I was not going to achieve my dreams. But many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success at the point they gave up. So I hope that all your obstacles will be overcome. I hope you can find the value in your life's challenges. They arm you with the tools to only be forged in fire, and they're going to be unique to you. People are drawn to you the more you draw from your tough experiences. So instead of running from them, embrace them, and I dare say, share them. Understand that your obstacles overcome make you more successful than you think. That's my words for you.
Amen. Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Rolle. That really just inspired someone. I know it inspired me. I'm going to take that with me, especially as I go through exams this week. So pray for me. And thank you for your presence, for being here. It was really informative. Thank you so much for agreeing to come. Awesome. Were you blessed? Yeah. Amen. Amen. And now we will have our Vesper Thought to close out our AYM program with none other than our very own Elder Elliot Phipps. Welcome him.
It's been such a very blessed day today. God has touched us from the Sabbath school table this morning all the way through until the message that we just heard from Dr. Rolle. I'm actually very tempted to not say another word because it seems that there's nothing that can be added. But I only say tempted because I do believe that God has given me a small word for us this evening that I don't want to disappoint by not sharing it. And so I'm just going to talk for a couple of minutes, not even just a couple. Specifically, my guidance was 5, and I'm going to do my best to cut it shorter than that. But the title is A Little While, A Little While. And the scripture reading, I only said memory text because I'm so used to doing Sabbath school, but is John 16 and verse 16. John 16 and verse 16. Eventually, we're going to look all the way through to verse 20, but here is verse 16. The Savior of the world, the Lamb of God, talking to his disciples, and he says, "A little while, and ye shall not see me, and again a little while, and ye shall see me, because I go to the Father." That is John 16 and verse 16. So as the sun sets on another day, another Sabbath day, and also as we are in the last days of 2022, it's not a cliche at all to say that we are much closer to the return of the King. Time is a constant in our existence. It gives us a marker for where we are and when we are in the context of our Creator and our redemption from this world. Moses recorded its initiation in the very first verse of God's Word when he wrote, "In the beginning." Before, there was only eternity. Time only exists because it has an end. What does time mean for us today as we race toward 2023? More importantly, as we race to the end of time. So in these couple of minutes, we're going to talk about a little while. The Savior of the world, the disciples got twisted up and befuddled with Yeshua's statement. What does a little while mean? It's a matter of perspective, perception, and expectation. Let's look at these together. You understand a little while is skewed by perception, experience, which is time lived, and allow me to illustrate. When you are 5, another year seems like an eternity of your existence. When you are 50, it goes by in minutes. Why the difference, and why do we feel this perception? Well, when you're 5, another year is 20% of your life. When you're 50, another year is only 2% of your life. And if we extend it a little bit further, when you're 80, it's only 1.3%. So the perception that we have is actually real. And I've made my own little formula for it, and I say that PT, which is perception of time, is equal to N plus 1Y over Y, which means the same thing that I just explained to you in Numbers. When the Son of Man spoke to his disciples, he was speaking in 2 time frames because he is not bound by time. He existed before he was born. He made David king and was at the same time descendant from him. He paused time in the grave and restarted it when he rose. Perception, second word. What you are waiting for and why shape your perspective. If you are sitting in your room contemplating the punishment you are about to receive, time will go by much too quickly. You know that the door is going to open and the lashes are going to come. When you are a freshman taking 100-level courses, graduation seems far away. But when you are studying for a test that 2 days from now, you already feel out of time. If you plan for a vacation in 6 months, it seems far away. If you prepare for it in the time is spent in a happy anticipation. If you procrastinate, anxiety builds as the time approaches. So what we are waiting for and our expectations impact both our perspective and perception. So in our last moment, let's look back at the verse. Then, this is 17 through 20. Then said some of his disciples among themselves, "What is this that he saith unto us, a little while, and ye shall not see me, and again a little while, and ye shall see me? And because I go to the Father." They said, therefore, "What is this that he saith? A little while. We cannot tell what he saith." Now Jesus knew that they were desirous to ask him, and said unto them, "Do you inquire among yourselves of this that I said? A little while, and ye shall not see me, and again a little while, and ye shall see me? Verily, verily, I say unto you, that ye shall weep and lament, but the world shall rejoice. And ye shall be sorrowful, but your sorrow shall be turned into joy. And if you can hear it, he's referencing back to the relationship of time, because from his perspective, he's trying to get the disciples to understand that in a little while, it will be over. From their expectation, he should restore their prominence in the world. They couldn't wait. Let's do this now, God. But he had the expectation of his impending death, an event he was born for, yet didn't look forward to. Divergent expectations. From their perspective, a little while was based on their perception bound in mortal flesh. But Jesus left eternity. There is no difference between an hour and 2,000 years, a little while. For the world's perspective, let the party keep on till the sun comes up, when in fact the sun himself is coming down. What is your perspective today? Are you living like the party will not end, or do you perceive that a little while means something different for one waiting on his appearing? Mark 9:32 says, the disciples didn't understand, and yet they were afraid to ask. Look around. Do you think we live in a democracy? Do you think the FDA or the WHO, the Surgeon Generals, have your interest in mind? Do you think our church leaders are all focused on redemption or position or consumption? I will end this thought with this thought. Perseverance only comes through enduring. Strength comes through enduring the struggle. We only have the time we are living this moment. Perception, perspective, a little while, and he will return. Thank you.
Amen. Indeed, just a little while. Just fix your perspective, as Elder Phipps just told us. I want to make a few announcements, well, just 2 announcements for you that are very important. Next week, we would not be having AYM, but instead, join us on December 31st for our Watch Night service. When did I say?
December 31st.
For what?
Watch night.
Sounds good. You're paying attention. That's good. The time will be at 6 p.m. because we'll be having candlelight communion. So I would say join us from 12. Sabbath school will start at 12. We'll have our candlelight communion. We'll break, have some good food, and come right back here for our watch night service that will continue all the way up to midnight. Yes, I said it, all the way up to midnight. So you do not want to miss it. Okay? Oh, and for the online viewers and those in-house, we want to invite you to send us a video, no longer than 2 minutes, telling us what's your favorite moment from AYM this year. What was it? Send that video to our email at aym@ephesus.org. Again, aym@ephesus.org. We're looking forward to hearing from you soon. Now, Elder Phipps will close us out with a word of prayer.
For our congregation that's here, let us stand. And those of you at home, let's just bow our heads. I just want to first say, we should always praise in public. And this year, our AYM has really, our department has really been on fire and done so many great programs, ending with this evening. And that that's thanks to our AY leader, Sister Moy Harris. And so I want to just give her that word of thanks. Yes, please, give her a hand. Let's pray. Most kind and loving Father, precious Lord, we come to you in thanksgiving, and we appreciate, Lord, the love that you bestow upon us day by day. We thank you this evening for Dr. Rolle, who came and talked to us about how, Lord, our neurons, our minds work. And I pray that you will let us take the things that he shared with us and not just have heard them, Lord, but will put them into action, particularly that of getting exercise. And so bless us as we depart from this place, but Lord, never from your presence, is our prayer in your Son's name. Amen.